Eala, she's a very dangerous player.
Fans were left stunned the moment Alexa Eala dropped to her knees in tears on center court. It was a powerful scene that captured hearts around the world, but the real story behind that emotional moment wasn't found on the grass, in the stadium, or even inside her tennis bag. The answer begins somewhere far from Wimbledon, hidden in an ordinary object that has quietly preserved the memories of where her incredible journey first began.
For someone who grew up in the Philippines and
That object sits inside a simple shoebox in a family home in Manila, holding a pair of old light-up shoes whose batteries stopped working years ago and a tiny pair of ruffled socks that no longer fit anyone. They may look like ordinary childhood keepsakes, but together they tell the story of a little girl who followed her older brother to tennis practice, taking her very first steps toward a dream that would eventually lead her to the biggest stage in the sport.
playing with brother and my grandfather every day after school with my ruffled socks and my light-up shoes and chubby cheek.
They once belonged to a little girl who raced onto a local club court every afternoon after school, gripping a tennis racket that was nearly as tall as she was. She chased her older brother through practice drills and quietly sought her grandfather's approval with every swing she took. That same little girl is now 21 years old. On July 4th, 2026, she stood on center court at Wimbledon before a crowd that refused to sit down. She stepped into one final forehand, watched the ball land inside the baseline, let her racket slip from her hand, and collapsed to her knees on the most famous stretch of grass in tennis. Tears filled her eyes before she even reached the ground, and across the Philippines, a nation of more than 117 million people, many of whom had never witnessed a Filipino win a singles match on center court during the Open era, shared that unforgettable moment with her. In a way, the tiny light-up shoes resting inside that shoebox had finally made it to Wimbledon too. To understand why this victory meant so much more than a remarkable third-round upset, you have to keep two truths in mind. Before this tournament, Alexa Eala owned just one main draw Grand Slam victory and had never advanced beyond the second round of a major. Standing across the net was Iga Swiatek, the defending Wimbledon champion, the world number 3, and one of the most accomplished players of her generation. Yet there was one detail that received almost no attention outside coaching circles. The very shot critics had spent years calling Eala's biggest weakness, her slower, spin-heavy left-handed serve, was about to become one of the keys to unlocking the champion's game. On paper, the gap between them was significant. Eala arrived ranked number 32 in the world, while Swiatek stood at number 3. Eala's only previous win over her had come 16 months earlier in Miami, a result many dismissed as a one-off upset by a wild card against an off-day favorite. Since then, Swiatek had captured the Wimbledon title, while Eala continued building a promising career that had yet to translate into major success. She reached the WTA 250 final in Eastbourne on grass, claimed 2 WTA 125 titles, including Birmingham just weeks before Wimbledon, and climbed to a career-high ranking of number 29 in March. But when it came to Grand Slams, the tournaments that ultimately define a tennis legacy, she was still searching for a breakthrough. That was the challenge everyone could see. The one that couldn't be measured on a scoreboard was even greater. For Alexa Eala, walking onto center court against Swiatek wasn't simply about facing one of the world's best players. It was about proving that the little girl in the ruffled socks and light-up shoes truly belonged on a stage where no one from her country had ever stood before. The tears that followed the final point were about far more than winning a tennis match. They were the tears of someone who had finally reached a place she had spent her entire life chasing. The opening set alone lasted 84 grueling minutes, an eternity in a best-of-3 match, and unfolded like a heavyweight title fight. Alexa Eala earned the first break for a 2-1 lead with a fearless forehand passing shot down the line, only for Iga Swiatek to answer immediately. Refusing to panic, Eala relied on a carefully crafted game plan, using high, looping returns to disrupt Swiatek's rhythm before finishing points with sharp, angled passes. She broke again to move ahead 5-3 and stepped to the baseline with a chance to serve out the set, but the defending champion responded exactly as champions do, blasting 3 straight forehand winners before holding serve to level at 5-5. It was the kind of momentum swing that has crushed countless lower-ranked challengers, yet Eala never flinched. The set rolled into a tense tiebreak, and that was where the match quietly began to shift. The very serve critics had labeled a weakness kept landing awkwardly at Swiatek's feet, denying the champion the clean returns she expected. After the match, Swiatek admitted that Eala's slower, spin-heavy serve was surprisingly difficult to handle, explaining that the slower it came, the more uncomfortable it became to return. Hearing a reigning Wimbledon champion publicly credit that shot as a decisive factor spoke volumes about how effectively Eala had executed her strategy. The tiebreak became a test of nerve, with momentum swinging back and forth as both players refused to give in. Eala erased multiple set points with remarkable composure, including one with an unreturned serve, before finally converting her fourth opportunity when Swiatek pushed a forehand long. Center court erupted as Eala captured the opening set, and from that moment, something changed. She walked into the second set with complete belief, playing with the confidence of someone who knew she belonged. She broke serve immediately, held comfortably with 2 aces, and broke again to race ahead 3-0. The same serve that had been questioned for years was now producing free points against one of the greatest players in the world. Moments later, Eala sat at the changeover leading 4-0 over the defending Wimbledon champion, and for that stretch of the match there was no underdog or favorite, only one player clearly outperforming the other. Swiatek refused to surrender, pulling one break back to narrow the score to 4-2, but the final game became a battle of pure determination. It stretched through 6 deuces as every point carried enormous weight. By then, the match had become about much more than tennis. It was about what happens when someone finally arrives at a place they once believed was beyond their reach and must summon every ounce of courage to finish the journey. Eala fought off 4 breakback points with remarkable composure, while Swiatek produced brilliant winners simply to stay alive. Every rally felt like a test of resilience rather than technique. Only after the final point was secured did Eala allow herself to release the emotion she had been holding back all afternoon, collapsing to the grass as years of sacrifice, doubt, and belief poured out in tears. On the third match point, with the pressure resting entirely on her shoulders and the ball on her own racket, Alexa Eala stepped into a forehand and struck her 24th winner of the afternoon. As the ball landed inside the court, center court seemed to pause for a single breathtaking moment before the crowd erupted. The statistics that followed confirmed this was no fortunate upset. Eala finished with 24 winners against just 21 unforced errors, while Iga Swiatek produced 32 winners but committed 44 unforced errors. Eala converted 5 of her 7 breakpoint opportunities, saved 8 of the 11 break points she faced, and won 55% of the points behind her second serve compared with Swiatek's 32%. Those are not the numbers of a player who simply caught fire for one afternoon. They are the numbers of someone who studied one of the world's best, trusted a carefully prepared game plan, and executed it brilliantly on the biggest stage in tennis. Yet statistics are rarely what a nation remembers. What people remember is what happened over the next minute. As soon as the final point was called, Eala didn't leap into celebration or throw her arms into the air. She quietly let her racket fall from her hand, covered her face, and sank to her knees as years of sacrifice and emotion overwhelmed her. During her on-court interview, still visibly shaken, she delivered a heartfelt message that resonated with millions of Filipinos watching around the world. She said, maybe for someone like Iga, who's won so many slams, or for someone like Serena or Venus, this achievement may seem small. But for someone who grew up in the Philippines, I want to train with my brother and my grandfather every day after school. In that moment, the victory became about far more than advancing to the next round. It became a tribute to every early morning, every practice session, every family sacrifice, and every dream that once seemed impossibly far away.
The world number 3 and one of the most decorated players of her generation. There was one more thing.
With my ruffled socks, my light-up shoes, and my chubby cheeks, this is everything. Those words alone were enough to move the center court crowd, but before the applause had even faded, Alexa Eala revealed something even more powerful. Smiling through her tears, she added, "Because I'm emotional does not mean I'm satisfied. So next round, let's go." That single sentence explained everything about the competitor behind the emotion. She had just achieved the biggest victory of her career, yet her mind was already focused on what came next. To understand where that relentless mindset came from, you have to know the man she lovingly called Lolo Bob. Lolo, the Filipino word for grandfather, was the person Eala has often credited as the reason she first picked up a tennis racket. He wasn't a professional coach or a famous athlete. He was simply a passionate club player who loved the game enough to study it, read about it, watch it for hours, and share everything he learned with his family. He coached Alex's mother in swimming, introduced her brother and cousins to tennis, and eventually brought young Alex onto the court after school, turning an ordinary family routine into the beginning of an extraordinary journey. In an interview with Clay magazine, Eala reflected on his influence with heartfelt gratitude, saying that every important achievement reminds her of him because of how hard he worked and how much he sacrificed for her dreams. So when she mentioned her brother and grandfather during her emotional center court interview, those weren't carefully chosen words for the cameras. They were a tribute to the people who believed in her long before the rest of the world did. The tennis community understood the significance of what they had witnessed. In her post-match press conference, Iga Swiatek openly acknowledged that Eala's style of play had disrupted her rhythm, admitting she would need to improve her own game to handle those challenges better in the future. Coming from one of the sport's elite champions, it was a remarkable show of respect and perhaps the greatest compliment one competitor can offer another. Long before this unforgettable Wimbledon run, another sporting icon had already recognized potential Earlier in 2026, boxing legend Manny Pacquiao expressed his pride in seeing a young Filipino athlete carrying the nation's flag onto the global stage, encouraging her to keep working hard because the country needed more athletes like her. 4 generations of Filipinos who grew up gathering around televisions to watch Pacquiao's biggest fights, hearing those words carried enormous weight. It felt like one national hero extending his hand to the next. Across the Philippines, that feeling quickly became reality. Sports writers described how the excitement that once surrounded Pacquiao's Sunday morning championship bouts had begun to reappear around Eala's Wimbledon matches, with families once again gathering to cheer for one of their own. The stage had changed from a boxing ring to a tennis court, but the sense of national pride remained exactly the same. For a country of more than 117 million people spread across thousands of islands, Eala's success represented far more than personal achievement. Before this tournament, no Filipino player had ever won a main draw singles match at Wimbledon during the Open era. Now she had won 3 in a single campaign, becoming the first Filipina to reach the 3rd round, and then the 2nd week, of a Grand Slam. Earlier in the year, she had already climbed to a career-high ranking of number 29, the highest ever achieved by a Filipino in WTA history. In many ways, the young left-hander from Quezon City, who developed her game at the Rafa Nadal Academy, had become something even bigger than a rising tennis star. She had become a symbol of possibility for an entire nation, proving that dreams once considered impossible could finally become reality. There are moments in a nation's sporting history when the result becomes bigger than the game itself. This was one of those moments. Yet it is easy to forget that just 48 hours before defeating the defending Wimbledon champion, Alexa Eala was facing real adversity. In the 2nd round against Australia's Maya Joint, a player who had already beaten her earlier in the season, Eala lost the opening set 6-3. For a while, she looked exactly as her critics had described her over the past 2 years, gifted, determined, but still searching for consistency at Grand Slams. Then everything changed. She responded by taking the next 2 sets 6-2, 6-0 in a commanding turnaround that many described as a measure of redemption. That sequence tells you everything you need to know. One match began with disappointment and doubt. Just 2 days later, she stood on center court closing out the biggest victory of her career against one of the greatest players in the world. The difference between those 2 moments wasn't talent. Talent had never been the question. The difference was resilience, the willingness to regroup after a difficult start, trust her preparation, and return with even greater belief. That isn't a fairy tale. It's the work of a professional who refused to let one bad set define her tournament. So think once more about that shoebox in a family home in Manila. Inside are a pair of light-up shoes whose batteries stopped working years ago and a tiny pair of ruffled socks that no longer fit anyone. They are probably still tucked away because parents rarely throw out the childhood shoes of a son or daughter whose dreams grow into something extraordinary. The little girl who once wore them hurried onto a tennis court every afternoon to spend time with a grandfather she lovingly called Lolo Bob. Like children everywhere, she first picked up a racket not because she imagined trophies or center court, but because someone she loved was waiting on the other side of the net. 15 years later, on July 4th, 2026, that same swing produced the 24th winner that defeated the defending Wimbledon champion. The woman who struck it collapsed to her knees in tears, but in many ways, nothing had changed. It was still the same swing, the same determination, and the same little girl chasing one more ball. The only difference was the size of the stage. After the match, IGA Swiatek admitted that she needed to go back and improve her game from the beginning. She was speaking about her own performance, but those words also captured what Alexa Eala had inspired in the Philippines. She had given an entire nation permission to dream from the beginning again. Her journey was already rewriting what young Filipino athletes believed was possible. Next, she would return to center court to face number 13 seed Jasmine Paolini, the 2024 Wimbledon finalist, with a place in her first Grand Slam quarterfinal on the line. Paolini herself acknowledged the challenge ahead, describing Eala as a very dangerous opponent. Whether that match ended in another victory or not, something historic had already happened. The story had come full circle. A little girl in ruffled socks once ran onto a neighborhood tennis court simply to spend time with her grandfather. Years later, a young woman fell to her knees on the most famous court in tennis, carrying his love, his lessons, and the hopes of an entire nation with her.